How's it going? Okay, so what is League of Legends? In a nutshell, in one sentence, it's an over-glorified slot machine. So effectively it works like this. Now, you have a player base in League of Legends, and their progress in the game is measured by MMR, which is the matchmaking rating. So the more they play, the more they win, they lose, depending on who they play against. That MMR level sets the skill and is being used by the system to match players against each other, including some behavioral scores. Okay, now why are games... Let's say we have two players, one is 100, another one is 100. It should be an equal game, but it's not, because one player gets stomped, and you wonder to yourself, why does that happen? This is because the player base is full of... I'm not going to use any bad words, but I'm just going to say... people with low human development index. Okay, so we're talking about, this includes children, this includes... Human development index is like, they're not very, how to say, not exactly PhD professors, if that makes sense, you know? It's people who buy crypto, people who follow celebrities and think that everything celebrity says is true, factually correct. They don't understand the difference between fact and opinion. They just can't differentiate between reality and a statement. It's kind of like this type of... They're called low human development index people. So children, because their brains have not yet developed. We're talking about unemployed people. People that didn't do well in school. And, you know, to some extent people who have mental issues. And like League of Legends is generally jammed with them. Just absolutely jammed with them. So, their decision-making capability is not usually good. Okay? So what happens, what they do. Now, when you meet a person who has very high human development index, they will be... So, we're talking about human development index people. Right? So, who is high on human development index? They will be specialists. So we're talking about, like, he can be an accountant, he can be a lawyer, he can be an engineer, he can be biology, he can be like working vaccination, working medicine, doctors. Like, they have very narrow specialism and they're very, very good in that situation. Whereas people with low human development index, they tend to be very, very broad. They're like jacks of all trades. They can do a bit of painting, can do a bit of singing. They're pretty good at cooking. They're pretty good at drawing. They're pretty good at dancing. They're pretty good at finding locations that are awesome. So they're the tour guide, they're the cook. They're kind of like a bit of everything, but there's no specialism. So that behavior, that low human development index, transitions into how they play the game. So what happens is, let's say a guy MMR is, again, 100, right? Now, assuming he plays the same champion and the same position, that's the MMR, right? But if he decides to, let's say his MMR 100 is he is playing mid lane Victor. That's his most successful champion, mid lane Victor. But because of they can't really deal with, it's the way they're constructed. They want to play everything at the same time. So what's going to happen? They can randomly start picking ADCs. They can pick junglers. They can pick strange picks that they saw somewhere. They start to introduce this randomness into the game. And that's for this reason, although they are technically by matchmaking rating the same, since they are randomly picking random stuff that they don't understand what they're doing, you introduce this complete randomness into the game, and that's why you get this incredibly inconsistent results. And League of Legends is the type of game where it's not like good player can only do so much, but the bad player can really cause the game to go only one way. Like a bad player can impact the game a lot harder than a super good player because of variables like counter picking in League of Legends. That's one example. So if you have extremely bad player on your team and the enemy has extremely good player on your team, but your team composition is equipped to deal with the my apologies, different example. Let's say you have a very good player on your team, a Smurf, and you have extremely bad player on your team, but the enemy composition is constructed in such a way where they can deal with the Smurf champion. So what happens is the bad player on your team is going to feed the enemy, and then Smurf cannot perform because the enemy team counters him, and he's not fed enough, and the enemy team is too fed for the Smurf to be able to deal with anything. So at this point, the Smurf is ineffective because the bad player and counter picking effectively cancelled the Smurf skill, Smurf player skill. So this is why bad players in League of Legends have more impact. It's not really about who has the best players, it's about who has the worst players. If that makes sense. So this is why you get this effect of just like a slot machine. So you can just roll the... Okay? So you can utilize things like dodging and see if you're... It's like playing a slot machine where you can see, because when the variables roll in a slot machine, whatever the cherry is, right, you can see whether you want to play or not. And you can just dodge enough until you get lobbies where you just always win. You see, I have multiple accounts, they all have 100% win rates. So look, this one has... Because it's an over-glorified slot machine. And that's it. For most people. Now, I'm gonna discuss high challenger players, professional players later. But for majority of players, the randomness, why it's like this, it definitely feels like this, is because the players, majority of the player base is low human development index. I mean, think about every single player that you ever played with. How many of them are specialists? They're talking about you, they're only playing jungle, they're only playing 1 to 2 champions, and they play to win. Almost none of them. So this is where this randomness just rolls into the game, and it's this like slot machine basically. It really is just a slot machine. There's nothing to it. It's just a very slow way to play a slot machine, because you can only do so much in this game. You have to understand that this is like some games to get a win. I had to dodge like 63 times. My record is now 92 times. 92. I've been dodging for 7.5 hours, but I still win at the end of the day. Well, I haven't played after 70 because it was just too much trolling. I just give up basically. But like, it's just fundamental thing is you can just roll. Look at your team, look at the composition of the enemy team, and say, okay, is your team good? Yes. Can the enemy team stop you? No. Okay, let's play. So you have two ways to win. Either your team is just dominating the enemy team, which happens a lot of the times, or condition 2, if your team is kind of not really... They're still going to be okay. Now, they're not going to be... It's very rare when you look at your team credentials, I suppose, statistics, and they are exceptionally good and they don't perform in the game. It's very rare, but happens occasionally. So what you do then is you're gonna get fed because you are a very good player. I'm assuming that. So then condition B kicks in, is where you're gonna win because you are dominating the map. You're gonna take all the dragons. You're gonna 1v3 the team fights, 1v5. I'm talking about like you're gonna kill 3 people and your team can usually clean up the other 2. And you just win the game based off objectives. or you just literally build their champ. Well, it's very rare to do that, but sometimes I used to do where you don't even need a team to win if their champions are so bad. Into your champion, you can just 1v5. But again, we're talking about extremely time-consuming process of finding this lobby where these two conditions exist, where your team is good, the enemy champions are bad, and you can 1v5, and your team can win as well. So this is why it becomes this slot machine. And if you play without it, if you just play every single lobby, you're gonna get extreme randomness. Extreme. It's basically whoever has the worst players is just going to lose the game, and that's it. Because feeders in this game, they've been already studies done. Like there is for example, a Yuumi bot in ranked that had 23% win rate, I think. So you see, like you can answer the question: what is better, an AFK person or a feeder? And the answer is AFK person is better, because AFK person does not feed the enemy, neither he takes the experience. But the feeder takes your experience, they give the enemy gold, and they set you behind. So it's very important not to have feeders on your team, like bad players. But the problem is with League of Legends, majority of player base are unfortunately in that category. They're either feeders or they're bad. Okay players are rare, good players are even more rare, and Smurfs are like, you're talking 0.1% of population. You also have to factor in that some players that are okay, they have bad mental, so if they die twice, so they get ganked too many times, they can literally AFK, causing you to lose the game. So finding a lobby where you only have good players and Smurfs is close to impossible in this game. Close to impossible. So most of the time you have to deal with combination of good, okay, and Smurfs, and avoid feeders and bad as much as possible, and make sure that the enemy team does not have champs that can make you useless. Then you also have to factor in that because you're a specialist, your champion can get banned, and that's a problem, or it can get picked. And that's another problem. That's another variable that's being introduced, and it's turning this into this gigantic coin-flipping slot machine. And that's it. Because this, like, I'll just show you, it's just predominantly, that's the player base of League of Legends, most of the time, I mean. They're gonna play a lot of different champions. They're gonna... Also, like, you have to understand, there are a lot of kids, and they are going to pick champions that are cool. They're not gonna pick champions that are effective. So that's gonna, again, you know, new skin comes out for Ezreal, now everybody's playing Ezreal, and it's not a strong champion. Smolder comes out, it's a Pokemon, all kids like Pokemon, so they're gonna pick the Pokemon. Whereas the enemy could be like serious, they want to win their pre-made, and your Pokemon is against Draven, or Jinx, or something like Twitch. Your Pokemon is not gonna do that well. So you see, if you combine it all together, it's just an over-glorified slot machine. There is nothing else in it. I'm gonna link this in the description below so you can play League a lot faster. Now let's talk about this second argument, which is some people gonna say, oh yeah, but there are people that can win like without dodging 100% of the time, which is true. Yes, I agree. People like challenger players who are like top 50. They can produce 80 to 100%, well, not 100%, 80 to 90 plus, let's say just 80 plus % results without dodging, just through skill alone. So let's look at those players. Some of them have parents that are gamers. There is like, I know in StarCraft there is like a dude, his parents were StarCraft player, and he is a child of a StarCraft player, and he is also StarCraft, and he has a brother who is a StarCraft player. So the conditions in which they practice and they're living are significantly different to a person who is doing a, let's say, a degree in business or degree in computer science, something like that, right? Because so that person's main focus is on his career and education, whereas these guys who are like the challenger players, their main focus is to play a game. They're effectively professional players for the game. So they've been doing it since like 5 years old probably, and they already have like 15 to 20 plus years of experience every single day. And they have good coaches because their parents were coaches. They have good reaction time because of genetics most likely. And they don't need to worry about having a job because probably their parents are loaded already with money. So they are the lottery winners to some extent. You do not fall. Most people do not fall into this category. So we can kind of split league into two. Esports, right? Into two categories. There is the leisure players, which is most people, and then there is pro players, which is the challenger players. Now, these are full-timers of the game. They play full-time, or they are omega talented. Like, their brain is just wired to play that game. Omega talent. So, these guys don't even count. In my mind, they don't exist because I don't belong in this category. Because I'm not a full-time esports player. So now I have to look at, for example, what type of results do leisure players get. So you can observe this in here. You go to League of Legends category in Twitch TV, League of Legends, filter low to high, and then look at people who have like 0 viewers, 1 viewers, 2 viewers. They are not professional players. They have jobs, they have colleges, they have stuff to do. They play this like occasionally, and then look at the type of results that they are getting. Because when you watch professional players, it seems that they can control the game. It feels like it, because they can play champions like Aurelia, they can play champions like Fiora, they can play champions like Riven. Good Riven is obnoxious to deal with. There's really no counterplay to her. But to get to the level, to play Riven on that level, you cannot do it part-time. There's no way to do it. So this is kind of like, let's say, outside of your league type of category. So we can just put it like to a side and say, okay, that is just pro players. It's kind of like trying to compare yourself to professional football players. I mean, they come from an entire background where their parents are wealthy, their parents have genetics, they have good connections. Like, the conditions to manifest their talents exist. But for most of us, where our parents, they work in jobs, we go to college, we work in jobs, this is not the category that we exist in. So we have to, most of the time we're leisure players. We are part-time players. Part-time players. So then we look at, okay, so what type of experience do part-time players have when they interact with League of Legends? So you can find a lot of players, like some English, I don't know, some people play mid, ADC, top. You can kind of watch them. I did a bit of analysis and check it out. And for them, League of Legends is this. It's just a over-glorified slot machine, basically. Yes, eventually you climb to your rank, you're gonna have 52%, 52 to 55% win rate. Eventually, if you play enough games, you're gonna get to your rank. But I mean, control over the game is not with them. It's completely random. Because again, we have to remember that player base in League of Legends is very, very... They're like loose cannons. Every single slot is like a loose cannon. And it's very, very rare to get good players. So that's why you get this completely random results. Like your mid laner, like I watched the game yesterday, and the guy was playing ADC. They were doing really well. But the problem is their mid laner was playing a champion, LeBlanc, right? And he was completely dysfunctional. He did not understand what he was doing. He did not know. Every single team fight was 4v5 because LeBlanc was either dead, shopping, she just backed for no reason whatsoever. Like, it's that the player wasn't even in the game. So they effectively lost. It was like surprising to see how well they did, but they eventually lost. And that was solely because of LeBlanc. 100%. And again, why did this happen? Because this guy is probably picked LeBlanc just because he thinks it's a good pick. He's not proficient in the champ. And that's why I'm telling you, and like most of them are like that. Most of the players are like that. So that's why you get this slot machine effect in League of Legends. So if you're thinking to yourself, oh, is this like skill-based game? It's not. It's the wrong game. It's the wrong game. If you're planning to play skill and if you want to develop specific skill where you can then enjoy yourself, kind of have control over lower bracket. Let's say you're diamond in some kind of first-person shooter game, you can 100% win all the lower bracket lobbies because the games is about reaction time. Your reaction time is exceptionally good. You can dodge the damage with your positioning. You can kind of like surprise your enemies. Do you understand? Like the skill will carry you. But in League of Legends, Diamond player does not guarantee a 100% win rate in lower brackets. Like they can't guarantee 100% win rate in Gold or Platinum because in League of Legends there is counter picking and the enemy can, like your teammates can play for the enemy, effectively speaking. I think it's MOBA is the only game where your teammates can effectively play for the enemy by just feeding and being completely useless. Because in League you can't dodge the damage, there is so much crowd control in the game, objectives are so important, team fighting is key. Like if you want to win the game, you have to win the team fight, there's no other way around it. But if your teammate is always dead and he's feeding gold to the enemy who can then buy items, and now even though he's inferior player to you, he's now stronger than you because his champion outscaled you because of their items, you cannot manifest your skill to overcome this bottleneck. And that's why you get this effect of complete coin flipping, and it's like a slot machine. It's literally like, it is a slot machine basically. So I'm just telling you, like if you want to get some skill, get good, it's the wrong game to play. It's the wrong game to play. The only thing I can recommend is maybe one-on-one League of Legends Aram, and that's it. But again, you are limited to, I mean, what can you play in one-on-one that is effective? Tryndamere is the most strongest. Rek'Sai, possibly Volibear, but Volibear has bad matchups. Like Akali, I think, just poops on him, straight up. Renekton, but he cannot compete with Rek'Sai and Tryndamere, for example. So you see, like, your Warwick is another one, but again, Warwick is good only into stuff like Rek'Sai, possibly, and Tryndamere, but Volibear, I'm not sure. Probably he's good, but again, he has bad matchups. So there's a limit to what you can do. Alright, so again, the conclusion, I've been playing this game for a long time, on and off, and my conclusion is that it's basically a slot machine, and that's about it. Okay, take care.